how to solve number sequence problems. First thing is to think about what a sequence is. A sequence are a list of numbers that follow a pattern. A more mathematical way of saying this is that they follow a rule. Let's look at this number pattern. So what we've got to try and work out is, how do these numbers change? How do we get from 3 to 7, 7 to 11, and 11 to 15? They're going to follow the same pattern every single time. The simplest thing is to think, are we adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing? Here, we're adding 4. Are we doing the same again? 7 add 4 is 11, yes. And 11 add 4 is 15. So the rule here is add 4. So that's quite a simple number sequence. So the next one will be 19, and then 23, and so on. Let's look at another number sequence, 34, 29, 24, and 19. So in this number sequence, the numbers are decreasing. First thing to look at is how much they are decreasing by. This is subtract 5, and it's subtract 5 again, and it's subtract 5 again. So I'm very confident now that my rule, because I've seen it 3 times in a row, is subtract 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to subtract 5. So 19 subtract 5 is 14. 14 subtract 5 is 9. So numbers that increase by the same amount each time, you're going to be adding the same number. Numbers that decrease by the same amount each time is subtracting a particular number. Now some number sequences get a bit more tricky. Let's have a look at this one. 2, 6, 18, and 54. So this number increases by 4, but then it takes a much bigger jump to increase, much more than 4, and then it takes a much bigger jump again. So we're not going to be able to just do adding like we did here. So what else could we be doing? Okay, so could it be multiply or could it be divide? Or it could be adding by a bigger amount each time. Let's try multiply. So what could we multiply by 2 by? So we could try 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Well, that doesn't work. So then we could try 3. And 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times 3 is 18. Now I don't know what 18 times 3 is, so I'm going to do 18 times 3 here. And I'm going to hope it's 54. It is 54. So my rule here is multiply by 3. So for my next number in my sequence, I will do 54 times 3. $162, and you can see it's made a huge jump this time, because if we're multiplying, the gap between the numbers is going to increase each time. So there's the type of number sequences that you could come across. Let's look at some questions that you might get, say in an assessment, or questions where it involves you have to fill in gaps, because this involves us thinking about the inverse operation as well. So I'm going to look at a nice simple example first. So here the number is increasing by 7. And it tells us the number in the sequence increased by the same amount, and that's really important, it's the same amount. So it's going to be add 7, that's going to be our rule. It's actually just the 7 times table. So 49 add 7 is 56. 56 add 7, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62 is 63, and then that one will be 70. Now if we want to go back and go the other way, we're going to subtract 7, because we're going to do the inverse. So here we're we are minus 7, so 42 minus 7 is 36. So we've got to remember, we follow the rule this way, add 7, but if we go in the opposite direction and do we need to do the inverse. If we're going in the opposite direction, the inverse of add is subtract. Okay, let's look at this one here. We've got 64, 32, 16. So we could, if we here we are minusing 32. So I could do 64 take away 32 is 32. But here if we minus 32, that would give us 0. So it's not a simple subtract question. The numbers are decreasing, so it's not going to be multiply. So that leaves division. So what are we dividing by? So we start with 2. So let's try 64 divided by 2. Half of 64. Now you might know this in your head. I'm going to do it using the bus stop method. Half of 64 is 32. So divide by 2. Now what is half of 32? I'm thinking it could be halving this sequence. I'm not sure, so I'm just going to check. It is 16. So yeah, I'm happy that this is a number sequence that each time we're dividing by 2. Half of 16 I know is 8, then half of 8 is 4, and half of 4 is 2. So some sequences involve you doing division, and they're often questions like this where you see that the number decreases and then decreases by a smaller amount, just dividing each time. Obviously going the other way is multiplication. The other type of question you might see, which is a bit more tricky, is a sequence which tells you what to do and then you need to follow the instructions. So just follow the instructions. If it says multiply by 2 and add 3, that's what you need to do. So you take 53, 53 times 2 is 106. We're at 106. The tricky bit comes when we have to go the other way. So here, we're not going to multiply this by 2 and add 3. That's what we do when we go that way. If we're going back the other way, we need to do the inverse. And when you do the inverse, you start at the end. So the last thing we did was add 3, so we're going to subtract 3. So 25 subtract 3 is 22. And then we're going to divide by 2, which is 11. So 11 goes there. And the great thing about this is we can check, because we can just do 11 and follow these instructions and see if we get 25. 11 times 2 is 22. Add 3 is 25. So let's just recap on what we did. Number sequences, a bit like being a detective. When we see the same increase each time, it's going to be a simple addition. When we say the same decrease each time, it's a simple subtraction. When the number increases by an increasing amount, it's often multiplication. And then we looked at some questions where we need to increase by the same amount, but when we go back the other way, we do the inverse. Then we looked at a question where the number decreases, but decreases by a smaller amount. On this example, that was division. And then we looked at following some instructions. They give you the rule, and you've got to use the rule to work out the next number. And remember, when you're going backwards, doing the opposite, you need to do the inverse starting at the last instruction and then doing the opposite. So this says add 3, subtract 3, and then divide by 2. And remember, you can check by filling in the instructions again. 11 times 2 and then add 3. So that's how you solve number sequences. Have a go, see how you get on.